So, do you remember the talk with your parents? And did that leave you maybe wanting more? Did that leave you fearful for your own time as a parent as to what it might be like to have the talk now in the 21st century, now that things are so much more out in the open and the culture so much more upfront about these things, and maybe you're just not even sure how to talk about them, or if you can talk about them? Has it left you wondering, gosh, I wish there was a book about this? Well, there is indeed a book about this, and I have read that book. It's called Decoding Boys by Cara Natterson. She's a doctor, and she is not only is she a doctor, but she has spent her whole life writing about puberty. And I'm going to put this up here to be seen. And she has spent her whole life writing and thinking and talking about puberty and how to go about having those conversations with children and young people. I really liked this book. I thought this was a very helpful book. It was conversational in tone. It was technical. It was medical when it needed to be without being pretentious. And right from the start, got right into the information as to how to have these conversations, how to have the talk, as we've called it, and how to do it in a gracious way, in a helpful way, and really equips parents and those who read this book in ways to go about this conversation in an informed way and in a caring way. One of the key things that the author really hits at, and I thought this was very helpful, this is very informative for me as a parent, was separating a conversation about puberty and changes that are going to happen to a body, and a conversation about sex ed and what is sexual intercourse and what do all of those things mean. That those two were separated has really helped me think about how I'm going to go about these conversations in our own family. And so the idea that you can talk to a child 7, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old about puberty and the changes that are going to happen to their body, and that it's a natural process and these things happen, and that's separated from that emotional maturity that would have to go on with a conversation about sex and sexual intercourse and sexual intimacy. That was a very helpful thing for me. The detail that she provides here was also helpful, that puberty, and she's especially talking about boys. She's got other books about girl puberty, and I imagine we will be talking about those at some point. But for boy puberty, there's two different processes going on. There's the increase in testosterone, which gets ready for sexual maturity, and that changes the body. Then there's also another process that leads to hair growing and other processes of puberty. And she does a really good job of separating those two processes that usually happen together and presenting all of that information. She covers everything. There's topics about how you can talk to your boys in so many different ways, and she covers so many different things. She talks about how to go about talking about the changes that are going to happen, and she points out, and this is another helpful detail, that usually by the age of 8 or 9 years old, puberty has begun on a chemical level, on a physical level inside of a boy's body. And really there's only a few ways to tell, and you might not be able to tell looking on the outside, but these processes are happening even at the ages of 8 or 9, and so it's appropriate to begin talking about those changes that are occurring and will occur, especially in outward ways. Another detail, another thing that was helpful was so much of the brain construction changes in the course of puberty, and so young boys and children in general aren't always able to make the best choice. They might know what the right thing to do is, but the brain structure isn't completely there until people are into their 20s, and so explaining why teenagers know what the right thing to do is, but they don't always do it. It's because the way that the brain works doesn't always function, and that was a helpful detail. It doesn't absolve children from making the right choice and doing the appropriate things and the things that you have trained them up to do, but it helps you, it helps me as a parent to understand why it is that somebody who knows better continually does the wrong thing. It's because the brain isn't fully working and firing and making those connections. Now, right off the bat, the author gets into the details. I think it's in like chapter 1, lays out things to do. Start talking. Start the conversation. It doesn't have to be a one and done conversation. It can be this gradual sort of a conversation. Listen, when you bring up the topics, listen and say, and take in what your child is sharing with you about these things. Avoid eye contact. You know how difficult it is to have a personal conversation about your own body, about the changes and the things that are going on. And so avoid eye contact. Maybe it's when you're playing catch. Maybe it's when you're playing a board game. Maybe it's when you're in the car and you have to be focused on the road and the child has to be looking out of the window. Avoid eye contact. Turn off your devices. There's nothing more distracting than trying to have an intimate conversation and a phone blowing up and buzzing on the table, or you reaching into your pocket. And this might just be a helpful parenting tip anyway. Children pick up on divided attention. And so when you're going to have these conversations about puberty and changes and development, put the devices away. Give your full and directed attention so that they will know that you're there listening. And just grab random moments when you see something on TV, when you read or are doing something together as a family, or just you and your son or your daughter are out. Take that opportunity for that short conversation. It doesn't have to be the talk and it only happens at once, but it can be an ongoing conversation. Another detail and tip that she gives is to be patient and to go slowly and not expect everything to click all at once or everything to click and make sense for your child all at one time, but to be patient with these things and to continually touch base and come back around to these. As your child gets older and is developing acne or other developmental things that might be socially awkward, help them to see the bright side, that it's short-lived. Everybody goes through it, and there might be other benefits in the context of your life with your child that you can say, hey, I know this is tough now, but here's really a benefit for you to work with. If you don't have the conversation, who's going to have it? How much, if you think back on your own life, how much wrong information did you learn that has continued to shape the way you think about these things? How much myth and legend and even lies have you learned and are still struggling to overcome? So if you're the parent and you're not having these conversations, who will? And the last tip that she gives in the opening chapter is again and again and again have these conversations. Not awkwardly, don't force it, don't make it always to be a big thing, but as different things become available and different times come to talk, embrace those things, embrace those opportunities to talk, to have those conversations that, maybe if you're in that 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old range, it's about puberty. As you're getting into that 12, 13, 14 age range, you're starting to talk about sexual intimacy and sex and what does that mean and how do you understand that? One of the things that I found lacking was any topic of religion, spirituality. She spends a lot of time, and I think helpfully, on the detriment and the downside of pornography and how it can be very harmful. But as a pastor, I would add the way that God has given us these bodily changes. He's given us the process of puberty. He's given us the gift of sex, and we want to use it in an appropriate way. We want to use it as He's intended it, as a union between one man and one woman. And so while I applaud her conversation on pornography, I would have wished she would have gone a step further to talk about what God has given us in this topic. And so the key here is to have the conversation again and again and again. Even as your child gets into those teenage years and wants to withdraw, that's when you need to continue to reach out the most. because that's when they need you the most. That's when things are the most difficult. And so don't fall into the trap of, oh, they're just a teenager, they're figuring these things out. That's not the point. That's not the way to go. The way to go is to continually reach out. When they withdraw, you continue to reach out and make those connections with more energy, because that's when they need you the most. This is going to be a refrain over and over again as we talk about parenting and developing kids, is as they pull back, you have to continually let them know that you support them, that you love them, you're there for them, and that you want that relationship, and you're going to do everything you can. So, Decoding Boys, Cara Natterson, doctor, very helpful book, very informative, easy read, conversational. I would highly recommend that you read it and maybe begin to employ some of those conversation topics and strategies that she has in her book. There is a book about this. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm Pastor Clayton Sellers, Faith Lutheran Church and Preschool in Collierville, Tennessee. I wish God's richest blessings on you and that He would continue to guide you in your parenting.